Section 1, Word Count 950. Dr. Leo Harrington adjusted the collar of his diplomat's uniform, a futile attempt to look confident as he stepped into the vast, metallic hall of the Zorvaxi mothership. Towering alien warriors with jagged armor and gleaming eyes turned to look at him, their sneers unmistakable. Leo forced a smile, clutching his briefcase like it was a shield. The Zorvaxi leader, Commander Trolloc, stood at the far end of the chamber. She was imposing, with obsidian skin that shimmered faintly under the overhead lights. Her piercing gaze swept over Leo, sizing him up. She leaned back in her throne-like chair and let out a booming laugh. "So, this is humanity's champion?" Trolloc's voice echoed, dripping with amusement. "Too small to satisfy, even in appearances." The room erupted into raucous laughter. Leo's face flushed, but he refused to let it show. He cleared his throat. "Well, Commander," he said, his voice calm, "we humans believe that size doesn't always determine effectiveness. Sometimes it's about precision." The laughter quieted as Trolloc raised a brow. "Precision, you say?" she replied, her tone half-mocking. "I'll admit you're bold for one so delicate." "Delicate?" Leo tilted his head. "I prefer compact and efficient. You should try it sometime. Being that tall must be exhausting." A few aliens stifled chuckles, and Trolloc's smirk widened. "You've got spirit, human," she said. "Let's see if it's worth anything. You claim humanity deserves a place among the Galactic Council. Prove it. Show us what you can do." Leo raised an eyebrow. "You want me to what? Flex my human charm until you give in?" Trolloc leaned forward. "We'll start with a few tests," she said. "Strength, stamina, intelligence, qualities that determine whether a species is worthy. Fail, and your people will remain the cosmic underdogs. Succeed." Her eyes gleamed. "Well, let's see if you can surprise me." Leo sighed internally but kept his expression neutral. "Great. Nothing I love more than being a walking demonstration. Let's do this." The warriors led him to the center of the chamber, where a massive object, something resembling a boulder fused with alien tech, rested. It was twice Leo's height and looked like it weighed as much as a small moon. "Lift it," Trolloc said, her grin unmistakable. "Show us what Earthlings are made of." Leo stared at the object, then back at Trolloc. "Sure, let me just call my chiropractor first." The room buzzed with quiet laughter, but Trolloc gestured for silence. Leo walked around the boulder, pretending to inspect it. "You know," he said, "this reminds me of my gym back home. Except we don't call it lifting, we call it strategizing." He pulled a compact device from his briefcase, a collapsible car jack, and set it beneath the boulder. The aliens watched in confusion as Leo cranked the lever. Slowly, the boulder began to rise. Gasps filled the room. "Voila," Leo said, stepping back. "Problem solved. It's not about brute force, it's about working smarter, not harder." Trolloc's laughter rang out again. "Clever, human. But this was only the first test. Let's see how long you can endure what comes next." Leo's confidence wavered as the warriors led him into another room. It was filled with strange contraptions and obstacles, walls to climb, pits to jump, and spinning platforms that looked like they belonged in a sadistic gym class. "This is our endurance course," Trolloc explained. "Complete it, and perhaps we'll consider humans capable of lasting longer than expected." Her tone was loaded with implication, and Leo chose not to acknowledge it. The course was brutal. Each step was a challenge designed to break him, but Leo powered through with a mix of determination and absurd improvisation. When faced with a chasm too wide to jump, he used a makeshift rope from his belt. When the spinning platforms threatened to throw him off, he clung to one and swung like a pendulum. By the end, he was drenched in sweat but still standing. "Is that all you've got?" he panted, leaning against a wall for support. Trolloc approached, her expression unreadable. "Impressive," she admitted. "But don't think you've proven anything yet. One more test, human. Let's see if that brain of yours is as sharp as your tongue." She gestured toward a strange, cube-like device on a pedestal. Its surfaces were covered in shifting symbols and intricate patterns. "Solve it," she said. "If you can." Leo squinted at the device. "You want me to play Alien Rubik's Cube?" "Sure, why not?" The Zorvaxi warriors murmured among themselves as Leo studied the cube. He twisted one side, then another, his movements deliberate. Within minutes, the symbols aligned, and the cube emitted a soft chime. "There," Leo said, holding it up. "Easy." Trolloca's eyes narrowed, though the corner of her mouth twitched. "You continue to surprise me, human," she said. "Perhaps there's more to your kind than meets the eye." Leo shrugged. "Like I said, size isn't everything. It's about what you do with what you've got." Trolloc chuckled, her voice low. "We'll see if you can back up those words in the trials to come." The chamber was alive with anticipation as the next challenge was prepared. Leo stood in the center, catching his breath and wiping sweat from his brow. Around him, the Zorvaxi warriors exchanged smirks, clearly eager to see how he'd fare in their next spectacle. Commander Trolloc leaned casually against a pillar, watching him with an expression somewhere between amusement and curiosity. "This one should be simple enough for you, human," she said, her voice carrying a playful lilt. "A test of stamina. All you need to do is outlast our finest competitor. Surely your compact efficiency can manage that?" Leo sighed dramatically. "Oh, I live for these moments where my inadequacy becomes the main attraction." He straightened and gave a mock bow. "What's the game? Galactic hopscotch? Alien hot yoga?" Trolloca's grin widened. She gestured to a hulking Zorvaxi male who stepped forward, his muscles rippling with every movement. The alien's forearms flexed as he approached a treadmill-like device that began to hum with a low mechanical growl. "You'll run," Trolloc said simply. "Longest to last wins." Leo blinked. "Seriously? Running? That's it. You've got this entire intergalactic spaceship with crazy tech, and we're doing a glorified treadmill contest? Do you think you're up for it?" Trolloc asked, her tone mocking. "Oh, I've run from commitment, bad dates, and worse decisions. I think I'll be fine." Leo stepped onto his designated platform, feeling the strange surface mold itself to his feet. Beside him, the Zorvaxi warrior stared ahead, already jogging in place with mechanical precision. A low chime signaled the start, and the platform surged into motion. At first, it was manageable. The pace was brisk but not overwhelming, and Leo matched it easily, his Earth-standard sneakers squeaking faintly against the alien material. Around the room, the Zorvaxi watched with barely concealed amusement, whispering among themselves. "This isn't so bad," Leo muttered. The platform's speed increased abruptly, nearly making him stumble. He adjusted, quickening his pace, but now his breaths came harder, and his legs started to ache. The Zorvaxi warrior beside him didn't even flinch, his movements as fluid as ever. "Having trouble, human?" Trolloc called out, her tone teasing. "Trouble?" Leo panted. "This is my warm-up." The treadmill's surface tilted suddenly, angling upward into a steep incline. Leo swore under his breath but kept moving, his arms pumping. Beads of sweat dripped down his face, and his lungs burned. The Zorvaxi warrior glanced at him, his expression smug. "You'll never last, human. You're weak." Leo forced a grin through his labored breathing. "Weak? I'll have you know I once climbed 3 flights of stairs carrying groceries. In one trip. Beat that." The incline increased again, and now the pace was relentless. The Zorvaxi warrior's smugness faltered slightly as he began to show signs of strain, his breathing becoming audible. Leo, on the other hand, tapped into the last reserves of his energy, and the sheer power of spite. "Not quitting," Leo muttered. Trolloc leaned closer, her voice a purr. "Impressive. For a moment I thought you'd fall off and disgrace your entire species." "Oh, I'm fine," Leo replied, though his legs screamed otherwise. "Just thinking about how much fun it'll be to tell my friends about my cardio routine on a spaceship." The treadmill suddenly shifted again, this time incorporating bursts of random speed changes and lateral movements. Leo stumbled but caught himself, gripping the sides for balance. The Zorvaxi warrior faltered for a moment as well, his feet slipping slightly. Leo seized the opportunity. "Hey, buddy," he called, his tone smug despite his exhaustion. "Looks like even 4 legs can trip up." The warrior snarled but said nothing, focusing entirely on staying upright. The room buzzed with excitement as the contest dragged on, the two competitors clearly nearing their limits. And then, with a sudden grunt of effort, the Zorvaxi warrior's legs buckled. He fell forward, landing on his knees as the treadmill powered down. Gasps filled the room. Leo, still running, raised a shaky fist in victory. "Humans, for the win!" he wheezed. The treadmill slowed to a stop, and Leo stumbled off, collapsing onto a nearby bench. The Zorvaxi muttered among themselves, some impressed, others clearly annoyed. Trolloc approached, her expression unreadable. "Well, human, you've shown unexpected endurance. Perhaps there's some merit to your species after all. Glad you're starting to see that," Leo said between gasps for air. Trolloc leaned closer, her voice low enough for only him to hear. "But tell me, does all your kind last that long under pressure, or are you just exceptional?" Leo managed a grin. "You'll have to find out for yourself someday." Trolloc laughed, loud and genuine. "You're bold, I'll give you that. But we're not done yet, human. There's one more challenge." Leo groaned, dragging himself upright. "Great. Can't wait." The next challenge was a feast. Or at least, that's what Trolloc called it. Leo wasn't entirely convinced. He stared at the long table laden with dishes that shimmered, bubbled, or squirmed unnervingly. Alien warriors gathered around, their expressions a mix of amusement and anticipation. "This is a test of fortitude," Trolloc declared, her grin wide and smug. "We Zorvaxi pride ourselves on consuming the galaxy's most intense cuisines. Let's see if your human constitution can handle it." Leo eyed the table warily. "Intense cuisines? Is that code for stuff that wants to eat me back?" Trolloc chuckled. "Something like that." She gestured to a dish in front of him, a quivering mass of translucent jelly. "Begin with this. It's harmless, mostly." "Mostly," Leo repeated under his breath. Reassuring. He picked up a spoon, hesitated, then scooped a small portion of the jelly. The substance wobbled ominously, emitting a faint, high-pitched whine. Leo gave Trolloc a deadpan look. "This isn't going to explode in my face, is it?" "Not unless you chew too hard," Trolloc said, barely containing her laughter. Muttering a prayer to no particular deity, Leo shoved the jelly into his mouth. The texture was an unsettling mix of slimy and crunchy, and it tasted like lemon, motor oil, and regret. He forced it down, his eyes watering slightly. The room erupted into laughter as Trolloc leaned forward. "Well? Not bad," Leo said, his voice strained. "Tastes like a bad decision, but I've had worse. You should try Earth's gas station sushi sometime." The next dish was worse. A plate of wriggling, luminous worms was placed before him, their glow pulsating in a way that made his stomach churn. The Zorvaxi warriors chanted something in their language, a rhythmic encouragement that sounded suspiciously like a dare. "Eat quickly," Trolloc advised. "The glow intensifies as they mature." "Mature?" Leo repeated. "Are we talking glow up or blow up?" Trolloc's smile was all the answer he needed. Resigned, Leo grabbed a pair of chopstick-like utensils and managed to pick up one of the squirming creatures. It twisted in his grasp, almost escaping, but he popped it into his mouth before he could second-guess himself. The taste was surprisingly mild. Like shrimp, a shrimp had the consistency of a rubber band. But then the aftertaste hit, a fiery, electric zing that made his tongue tingle and his eyes widen. "Spicy," Leo coughed, reaching for a glass of what he hoped was water. "It's an acquired taste," Trolloc said, clearly enjoying his discomfort. "Yeah, well, humans are nothing if not adaptable," Leo shot back, grabbing another worm with exaggerated determination. As the feast continued, the dishes became increasingly bizarre. One platter contained what looked like miniature, multi-eyed creatures that screamed when bitten. Another involved a soup that actively tried to crawl out of the bowl. Through it all, Leo persisted, his stubbornness outweighing his common sense. The Zorvaxi warriors began to exchange glances, their initial amusement giving way to begrudging respect. By the time the final dish arrived, a towering confection of spiked fruit that oozed purple juice, Leo was on the verge of collapse. He stared at the dessert, then at Trolloc. "Let me guess," he said, his voice hoarse. "This one's a palate cleanser that also doubles as a biological weapon." "Something like that," Trolloc replied, her tone teasing. Leo sighed, cutting a small piece of the fruit. The juice hissed as it touched his plate, releasing a puff of vapor that smelled vaguely like burnt cinnamon. He steeled himself and took a bite. To his surprise, it was delicious, a burst of sweet, tangy flavors that made him forget the horrors he'd endured. He finished the slice quickly, earning a round of applause from the watching Zorvaxi. "Well done, human," Trolloc said, clapping slowly. "You've endured our most challenging fare and lived to tell the tale. Perhaps there's more steel in you than I thought." Leo leaned back in his chair, utterly exhausted but triumphant. "What can I say? Humans are full of surprises. And indigestion." Trolloc smirked, her gaze lingering on him. "I'll admit you've impressed me. But there's still one final trial. Are you ready to face it?" Leo groaned but pushed himself upright. "Ready? No. Willing? Absolutely. Let's get this over with." Trolloc laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. "Spoken like a true warrior. Come, human. Your greatest challenge awaits." Leo found himself in a dimly lit arena, the air thick with tension and the faint hum of alien machinery. In the center of the space was a massive contraption, a cube-shaped device bristling with glowing panels, gears, and blinking lights. The Zorvaxi warriors formed a circle around him, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. Commander Trolloc stood off to the side, her arms crossed and a wicked smile on her face. "This," Trolloc began, gesturing to the device, "is the trial of wits. A test to measure the sharpness of your mind, the resourcefulness of your spirit, and your ability to adapt under pressure." Leo groaned inwardly but managed a tight smile. "Great. Because nothing says fun like alien puzzles with a side of existential dread." Trolloc ignored the comment, stepping closer to the device. "The rules are simple. Solve the sequence before the timer runs out, or the cube will reset itself." "Dramatically? Dramatically?" Leo repeated, frowning. "That's not ominous at all." Trolloc leaned in, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "It'll explode, human. Try not to fail." Leo blinked, momentarily speechless. "You know, we usually just use escape rooms for this sort of thing back home. Much lower stakes." The crowd murmured as the cube's timer began to count down, its display a series of alien glyphs that flickered faster with each passing second. Leo approached the device cautiously, examining the intricate patterns and flashing lights. "All right, Leo," he muttered to himself. "Time to channel every bad sci-fi movie you've ever seen." The first puzzle seemed straightforward, a series of tiles that needed to be pressed in the correct sequence to match a glowing pattern on the cube's surface. He hesitated for a moment, then began pressing the tiles, his movements quick but deliberate. Behind him, Trolloc watched with a bemused expression. "Careful, human. One wrong move, and the cube will reset, or worse." "No pressure," Leo shot back, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Just trying not to die in the name of intergalactic diplomacy." He completed the first sequence with seconds to spare, the tiles lighting up in a wave of green. The crowd murmured in approval, but Leo barely had time to celebrate before the next puzzle appeared, a complex grid of spinning disks that needed to align in a specific configuration. "This is just an alien version of a Rubik's Cube," Leo muttered, his fingers working frantically to adjust the disks. "Only way more stressful." The disks clicked into place, and the cube emitted a low hum, signaling his success. Sweat dripped down Leo's brow as he glanced at the timer. "Still ticking. 2 down," he said, exhaling sharply. "How many more to go?" Trolloc's smile widened. "Enough to keep it interesting," The third puzzle was anything but straightforward. A series of holographic projections appeared around the cube, displaying incomprehensible alien symbols and equations. Leo stared at them, his mind racing. Okay, think, he muttered. Patterns. Logic. Don't overthink it. He noticed a faint glow around one of the symbols, a subtle clue that guided him to the next step. Piece by piece, he deciphered the sequence, his hands moving swiftly across the cube's surface. As he completed the puzzle, the holograms disappeared, and the timer paused briefly before resuming with an even faster countdown. Seriously? Leo exclaimed. You're speeding it up now? That's just cruel! The crowd laughed, clearly enjoying his frustration. The final puzzle emerged, a series of glowing rods that needed to be pulled and twisted in a specific order to deactivate the cube. The rods vibrated slightly when touched, each emitting a unique tone. Great, Leo muttered. Now it's a musical instrument. Just what I needed. He hesitated, then began experimenting with the rods, listening carefully to the tones they produced. The sequence started to take shape in his mind, a melody that matched the rhythm of the cube's hum. As the timer neared its final seconds, Leo pulled the last rod into place. The cube let out a triumphant chime, its lights dimming as it powered down. The arena was silent for a moment, then erupted into cheers. The Zorvaxi warriors clapped and roared, their respect for the human evident. Leo staggered back, his hands on his knees as he caught his breath. And that, he said between gasps, is how humans do puzzles. You're welcome. Trolloc approached him, her expression unreadable. She studied him for a long moment before nodding. You've passed the final trial, human. Against all odds, you've proven your worth. Leo straightened, a grin tugging at his lips. Does that mean we get a spot on the Galactic Council? Or at least a participation trophy? Trolloc laughed, the sound rich and genuine. It means your kind has earned my respect. Whether that's worth more than a trophy, time will tell. She extended a hand, and Leo shook it, feeling the strength in her grip. For what it's worth, Trolloc added, her voice soft. You've surprised me, human. Perhaps size isn't everything after all. Leo smirked, his exhaustion forgotten. Told you. Compact and efficient. You'll never underestimate humans again.